If you had a microscope and could look at a piece of a leaf, you would see thousands of tiny openings which branch out until the leaf has all of the materials it needs. What happens now?
I thought it would be useful for you to have a little bonus lecture right now to hear about 5 dumb things that might mess you up in After Effects. Okay, so the first dumb thing is number 1, an annoying preference. So when you first open After Effects, it has some preferences turned on and some preferences turned off. And I believe that one of the preferences that is turned off is something that myself and almost everybody who animates in After Effects finds really useful to actually have on. So I definitely wanted to bring this up right away. But before I talk about the actual preference, I kind of want to show you what it does. All right, because I think it'll just make more sense this way. So I have this circle on a blue background, and I've got my position property revealed. So I'm going to press the stopwatch to make the first keyframe, right? Oops, I press it. And now I'm going to move forward in time over here. And then I'm going to move over here in time and move the circle up here. And you can see that right away, this is a little bit different than the examples that I've been showing on screen already, because I have this preference turned off, okay? And what this preference does, which we'll get to eventually, is it creates Bezier handles and curves for the motion path by default. Okay, and I don't find this too useful, even though it is sometimes very, very useful, obviously, to have these Bezier handles on there, but I prefer to put them on myself and when I want to, and not just have it default that anytime you make a new position place for any object, it automatically defaults to putting a curved path in. Okay, so it's a little bit of a preference thing, but I think you'll find it easier if you turn this preference off. And I actually want to show you one more thing before we get to the preference itself, okay, to explain this really clearly. And this is a very, very, very common error that new After Effects users make. And so I definitely want to point this out, okay? So what I'm going to do is go back to the beginning of the comp, and I'm going to take my circle and I'm going to drag it off so that it's here. And now I'm going to make my position keyframe there, and I'm just going to move to like 1 second in the comp, right, or over here, and I'm going to move this across, and I'm going to hold down on Shift so that it moves in a straight line, right? And now what I'm going to do is go back to 15 frames, which is when it's in the middle, okay, and I'm going to make a keyframe there. And what I kind of, let's just say I'm trying to animate it to come on and then stop in the middle of the screen and hold for like 10 frames or whatever, and then move off, okay? So what I would do is I would move forward that 10 frames or whatever. Here I can even hit Shift and page up to move 10 frames. And then normally I would copy this keyframe, copy and paste it right there, okay? And then I'd probably stretch this back out so that the timings were roughly even. And, you know, that feels like it should work because, you know, here I am at this keyframe, and if we look at the actual position values, it's for the X position, it's 967.5 by 502.5, okay? That's the exact pixel place where it's at. And if I use K, by the way, J and K jump back and forth between previous keyframe and last keyframe, right? So if I press K and jump to my next keyframe here, the copy, we will not be surprised to see that the values are the same, that it's 967.5 for the X and 502.5 for the Y, right? So it feels like it should just hang out there in the middle and pause, right? But actually, because of this preference, it doesn't. And I'll show you what happens. Check this out. Right? There's this like a little annoying jog around where it goes too far and then it goes back and then it comes back off. Well, you know, this is pretty annoying. And, you know, I guess you're wondering, why is this happening? Okay? It's because of these Bezier handles. So look, if I select all the keyframes, you can see that there's big old handles on these 2 middle keyframes. Well, you can only really see one of them because they're directly on top of one another. But if I take, just say, if I select the last 2 keyframes, and then with my CTI on one of the keyframes there, and I pull this down, you can see a lot better what's happening, which is that the handles are pulling the circle past the point of the keyframe, right? And then making a curved path, as it's wont to do with this preference, to the next one, which is also pulled out here, right? So I'm gonna, now that we see that and we see the problem better, I'm gonna undo that and put that back there so it's in a straight line, okay? And there's a few different ways to solve this if this happens to you, and I just want to mention those right now, okay? So 2 different things that you could do. One is you could select this keyframe, and a little bit like we did in the homework in the lesson 1 exercise when we put arcs in is that I'm going to go up here and find my pen tool and then pull down on this until I get the convert vertex tool. All right, looks like a little upside down V at an angle. And now with this selected, with this keyframe, I can click on that and you see it got rid of the Bezier handle coming out. And now I can select this and click on that, and now that gets rid of all the Beziers. And now if we play this down, I believe it just goes like that and stops just like we want it to, okay? So that's one way, is convert the vertexes of those 2 points, right? I'm gonna hit undo and undo so we have it back the way it was. Now, there's another possibly trickier way to do this, which is really actually easy, but it's like a little bit of a thing to think about, is that, so we have this jog around on here, right? And the problem is that we want this value to hold here and then stay holding there, but it's creating this jog around in between because the Beziers, right? So the little trick that we could do here is select this keyframe, and now if I Option and Command click on this, I will make it into a hold keyframe, okay? We talked about this briefly once, but hold keyframes just hold their values until they encounter the next keyframe, right? So what that means is it's just in place until it hits this, which is an identical copy of it, and then it just moves off, okay? So it actually still has the Bezier handle coming into this, though it's in a straight line, but it loses the one coming out and the one going into the next one because of the hold keyframe, and so it plays like this, which is the same as the previous solution, okay? Now there is, and I'm gonna undo that now, there is one other solution, but it's sort of the biggest pain in the neck way to go, but I did want to explain this to you, which is that you can get in here and rather than clicking on this point with the convert vertex, for whatever reason, if you want, you could zoom in here and, you know, with this selected, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna grab this point now and I'm gonna drag this kind of near, and actually not quite at a straight line, but near the center. And now I'm gonna zoom all the way in and go back to this, oops, and now I have to hit Option, and I'm just gonna put this right into the center there, okay? So I know it's kind of in the center there. And then what I can do is go over here and do the same thing with this one and drag this back. And again, I'm gonna put this kind of close so that I can zoom in even further. And now put that there, okay? And now I can go back to this one and select these points and do the same thing. I told you this is a pain in the butt. So I'm gonna do this, get in a little closer, and now I have to hit Option, okay, and drag that to the exact center. Now I can pull back a little bit and find the other one, and now drag this and get kind of close, and move this down and put this in the center. Now what you're gonna see is that this didn't, I betcha, well let's look at it, but this is the worst way to go, and in part because I betcha I didn't do it precisely. Well, maybe I did. Maybe I did. But oftentimes it's really easy to mess this up a little bit, where even if there's just a tiny little shift because the Bezier points aren't exactly in the center or whatever, it's very easy to mess this up, okay? So, long ramble there, and now let me actually show you the preference that takes care of this, okay? So if we go up here to our After Effects and then Preferences and General, okay? This opens the Preferences tab, and now here's the one. Default Spatial Interpolation to Linear, which is just a fancy way of saying, don't put Bezier handles on my position keyframes, just make them linear, non-Bezier keyframes, all right? So click that on for sure and hit OK. And now I believe that if I undo that and I make a position keyframe for this, okay, and then I move in time and I grab it and I make another position keyframe, now it is making linear, non-Bezier keyframes. So yay, okay, that's number one, taking care of that annoying preference. Number two is the layer window. So this is actually a fairly common problem that happens to people when they're first starting out in After Effects. You have like a little animation here that you're totally happy with and lots of things on screen, and then for some reason, possibly because you're trying to rename something like the background, for example, you double click on this, and what happens is all of a sudden your other layers appear to have disappeared from screen, okay? And you're like, well, what's going on? Where's my layers? I only see the background, right? Well, what's actually happening is you've opened the background layer window, okay? In this case, the background. But you've opened the layer window, which occupies basically the exact same screen real estate as the composition, which is right here in another tab. And these tabs are kind of invisible, so you might not even see that you're clicked on this. But if you're here, you can't like do anything, and you don't see any of your other layers like here, right? So if you accidentally open the layer window, or if you accidentally seem to lose all of your other layers and you're freaking out and you only see one layer, you might be in the layer window, which is right here next to your composition window, okay? One little dead giveaway is this bar of color across the bottom, but that corresponds with the color of the label color that you've given it. So for example, if this had none, okay, this would be kind of gray and might not read, but in the normal composition window, you don't have that down there, that little like time code indicator, right? So that's one giveaway. And just make sure that that doesn't happen. And if it does, you remember to just click back over into the composition, and then you will find all your things again. Error number 3 is missing artwork. And this is actually a pretty serious problem that happens definitely to everybody sometimes. And it's a result of a pretty simple thing happening, but it can seem really baffling and scary and awful the first time it happens. So I definitely want to go over this, okay? So like I said in the past, After Effects doesn't actually contain the media or the assets within the project. It just references to them in specific places on the drive, right? So if you take that artwork and move it to a different folder, After Effects will no longer recognize where it is. And this is what will happen. You'll open After Effects and it'll come up with all these weird color bars in it, okay? So what you'll see is, if this happened to you and your footage went missing, then all the animation that you put in there is still there. It's just been, the artwork has just been replaced by these weird color bars, okay? So don't be scared if this happens, and just know that all that happens is After Effects is looking for the footage or these layers, and it just can't find them. So as long as you didn't like either throw away the art layers and then empty the trash, which would be no good, or more commonly what's happened is you've moved the After Effects project like onto a drive and then opened it up somewhere else, and you just haven't brought the footage with it, right? So you need to do that. You need to kind of find the folder where the footage is at, assuming that it's all still on the same machine, and then reconnect the media, okay? So I've created an example like this, and here is my missing artwork, right? And you can see that the color bars also are played out in the little icons, and these are kind of, the words are in italics, all right? So it's just really trying to indicate warning. So the way that you deal with this is you right-click on this and go to Replace Footage, and then File, or Option-Command-H, right? And then it opens this folder, and so what I have here are two different folders. This is the one where it used to be, and this is where I moved it to fool the computer, okay? So now all I have to do is point to this file, which is the same one, and if I press Open, okay, it will tell me here that 3 additional missing items have been found, because it already knows to take all the other layers as long as they have the same names and just connect those up with the other ones, right? So there you go. And now we see that, and we see that our animation is all preserved, and we see that the layers have come back in over here and are no longer, with the little color bar icon, all right? So that's all you have to do in case you misplace your footage, is just go to right-click on it and go to Replace Footage with a file, and then navigate and find the original file, all right? Number 4 is a preview error. Just say you have like all this animation here and you're totally happy with it and it's just what you want, and you go to preview it and you press spacebar or 0 and you get this weird error. After Effects error. Cached preview needs 2 or more frames to playback. And I love that playback is 1 word rather than 2. I always feel like it should be 2 words. 2 or more frames to play back, but whatever, okay. And so you're like, what the heck's happening? And if you press it again, just in case you thought that was an anomaly, you get the same error, okay? So this one's really easy to figure out. What's happening is you're just trying to preview 1 frame of video. And if you think about it, right now we are previewing 1 frame of video, right? It's just hanging out here on this still. But you can't set the work area to 1 frame, otherwise it's sort of like it doesn't want to do that, right? So if you extend this back and then you preview, you'll be able to see your animation again, just like normal. Number 5 is importing a sequence. And this happens to everybody sometimes because it's very easy to make this mistake, all right? So here, let me show you. When I go to import, which is Command I, right? What happens is if you have just say 5 drafts of something, and you labeled each one, number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4, number 5, or whatever in a sequence, which is actually a fairly common thing to do. If you don't want to save over something, you save it as number 2, and then you save that as number 3, et cetera, et cetera. This can occasionally mess up After Effects in a kind of a funny way. So I'm going to show you this. If you select, for example, the first one, and I'm going to press this Options button here, what happens is After Effects, when things are numbered sequentially like this, when the number is the last character especially, it thinks that it's importing footage. Because one of the things that After Effects can do is, when you shoot like a roll of, well, not really a roll, but you shoot a bunch of photos on a digital camera and they're labeled like X000671 and then 00672, and they're like labeled sequentially. Well, if you shoot something like that for stop motion or whatever, or you want to pull those photos in as a footage sequence, you can do that if they're labeled sequentially, right? So After Effects accidentally thinks that the different versions of this are like a sequence, right? So just make sure, or actually if you didn't hit Options and you just imported it, if it naturally imported this way, okay, this is what it's going to look like. I'm going to hit Open, and then I'll hit Footage, fine. And then the icon for it is this little timeline, flip book, or series of photos, or whatever you want to call that, right? And then it's showing you example 1 through 5, and it's one frame. Like if I take this and I drop this in a comp now, it's only showing me one frame. Well, actually, if each was different, it would be showing me, one artwork example, then the next artwork example, and then the next one, right? In this case, they're all the same because I just copied them to make the example. But so this is definitely something you want to avoid. And let me delete these, right? And now let me import it the right way, which would be to import it just like this, and then make sure that this is checked off, okay? We'll talk a lot more about importing in a whole different lecture, but I just want to make sure that you realize that if this button is checked on and you have numerically sequenced art, it will definitely pull it in as footage and you will not know what to do with it, okay? Cool. Number 6, one frame overlap. Here we have a situation in After Effects where we have a cut, and we want to cut from one thing to the next, right? From one shot like this or graphic to the next, right? We just want to have a simple cut. And so we want to line up the layers like this so that they butt up next to each other, okay? But let's watch this down. Okay? It's a simple cut, but there's a little tiny error in it. Can you see the error that I'm talking about? If not, no worries. You'll be training your eye over the course of this class, so don't sweat it. But there's a one frame overlap. If I zoom all the way in, you can see it right here. And this frame, you can see both parts of the artwork at the same time, right? I'm going to play it again and see if you can see it now. Once you kind of know what it is, you can see it, right? So this is just a super common thing that happens, and I see this a lot. And I think this is a result of, somebody deciding to trim one set of layers here, and they go here and they select all these and they trim down to here, right? And then they take the other layers that they want to cut and they trim to right here, right? And that's what creates the problem. If you zoom all the way in like I just did, you can see that creates an overlap. The way you have to trim things in After Effects always, is just say I'll go here and I'll trim these here just like normal, but then I gotta hit page up and go one frame back toward the beginning of the composition, right? And then I can trim the previous layer to right there. And then it looks like this, which is what you want. Right? We really could tell, even if you zoom in all the way, like this is one frame and this is one frame, and you can see that there's no overlap there. And then just for the heck of it, we're going to watch this down now and tell me if you can see that it looks a little bit cleaner now. Yeah, I think you could see that, right? So it's not all gloom and doom. Now I want to talk about 4 things that might save your butt. Number 1, 99 levels of undo. Yeah, I just don't know what to say about this because it's so awesome. And I think it's more levels of undo than in any other Adobe software that I can think of, right? So you can go ahead and make tons of mistakes knowing that you can undo that 99 times before you run out of undos, okay? So that's good news. And so is number 2, the autosave preference. So here in After Effects, let's set this up right now for you, okay? So go up to After Effects CC and then Preferences and then Autosave. Right? That opens up the preferences, and here's the autosave. If you just open general, it's right here, autosave, okay? So I've set mine up to save every 20 minutes, which is, short enough period of time that it's saving pretty regularly, but not so quickly, like every minute, that the autosave is constantly like interrupting me. You'll find the perfect one for you, but definitely turn on autosave and save it every, at least half hour, maybe every hour. It really depends on you and how fast you're making changes to your work, okay? I would definitely keep this checked on, save when starting render queue. That might save your butt sometime too. And the maximum project versions, this is, you could set this to whatever you want. I set mine to 5, which might seem like a small number. You could set it to 100, and then it just, like, every time it saves a version, every 20 minutes, it puts it in that folder, and it saves that many number of them. I just find that it kind of gluts up my machine if I save too many versions, but again, personal preference. So definitely turn on autosave, and oh, by the way, it only starts autosaving once you save your project the first time. So turn on autosave, and always remember at the start of the process to save your project. Number 3, purge memory and disk cache. I'm not sure this will happen to you because it tends to happen with much bigger projects than what we're probably going to be working with in this class. But just in case I did want to mention this, okay? What you'll notice is that there are times when your machine will start acting really slowly, and all the RAM previews will take a really long time to make, and maybe if you grab something and try to move it, it'll be kind of logy and slow and kind of delayed and stuff. If you feel like your machine is acting that way, or in some weird way, this is what I suggest you try first, okay? Go up to Edit, and then Purge, and All Memory and Disk Cache. Because remember, After Effects doesn't contain the artwork, it's just referencing it, and it builds the animated sequences into the RAM of your machine. And the way that After Effects architecturally works is that it tries to preserve some of those, some of that data somehow behind the scenes and keep it in a little bit of a cache, even when you're making changes and stuff, so that it can preview as quickly as possible without getting too technical. So basically, sometimes this just gets all filled up and you need to kind of empty this, right? So if you click on this, you'll see, are you sure you want to delete all files? And you see 93 gigs. That means actually that my RAM is kind of all filled up with this stuff already, because I think I only have about 100 gigs of RAM. So I would say, even though it seems a little scary, go ahead and click OK, and you're not going to lose anything except for basically references to things, right? So now it's going to empty this, and the more you have in there, the longer it's going to take to empty. And then basically once this is done, your machine should run better. You will need to, anything that you had sort of made a RAM preview of, now the little green highlight bar, which suggests that those frames are in the RAM, are now gone, but it'll quickly build those back on, all right? Number 4, restarting your computer. If you find that After Effects gets all weirdly locked up or is giving you really strange errors for basic things, for example, you go to open a comp and a different comp opens, or you select a layer and press P and the scale is revealed, or some weird basic things like that, I'm going to suggest that you go ahead and save your project and then restart your computer. I think you'll be surprised to see that once it's restarted and you relaunch After Effects, a bunch of those dumb little errors might have gone away. Or at least I hope so for your sake. Right on, so this was 5 dumb things that might trip you up in After Effects and 4 solutions that might help you out with those, all right? I hope I saved you from pulling out any of your hair, and thank you very much.
If you had a microscope and could look at a piece of a leaf, you would see thousands of tiny openings which branch out until the leaf has all of the materials it needs. What happens now?